All right, hey everybody, welcome to this week's show. Today I am talking with Tyler Riggin of Unicorn Bitters. And if you've been listening to the show for any amount of time, you know what a huge fan I am of both medicinal, digestive, and cocktail bitters. Tyler's wife got in touch with me last Christmas and she asked me to autograph a book, and I was, of course, glad to do that. And in response, they sent me a sample of their bitters, and I have to tell you, these are probably, well, not probably, these are the best quality medicinal cocktail, whichever you want to call them, bitters that I have encountered. Now, when I say medicinal, they have all the herbs in there that you would want. They have, all the ginseng and everything, but they also the spices are really forward in the taste. You don't just get the bitter, you also taste like the orange bitters. You taste the orange, you taste the vanilla, you taste the spices. And so I've really been enjoying these. And so I asked Tyler to come on the show and tell us a bit about the company and himself and the product. And yeah, so Tyler, why don't you tell us a little bit about, well, tell us how you got into bitters, and then we'll get into a little bit about your bio and a little bit about the company.
Sure, sure. Thanks so much for the warm introduction. Thank you for having me. Yeah, the bitters, I started really focusing on those in 2021 during the pandemic. Um, Everything shut down, and I had been making herbal tinctures for a while. Um, I had been making some medicinal mushroom tinctures. I had some reishi tinctures and some chaga tinctures, and I really had gotten into that and gone on a few nice foraging trips with a close friend of mine in northern Michigan. And I had been making some other medicinal tinctures for a while, and kind of it was just like the culmination of many things. First of all, I love bitters. I like aperitifs and various digestives, and I had been, taking bitters and different cocktail ingredients and things like that for their digestive benefits for some time. I'd been bartending for some time, and so I feel like it was just like the perfect timing where I was able to focus on all these things. Another thing that happened is like um, with making tinctures, sometimes it was a struggle for me to find really good high proof ethanol, not neutral grain spirits, really
Hmm.
from a viable distillery. And some places opened their doors to me because I think they had such a surplus of this, and they were really pumping the stuff out for making hand sanitizer and stuff like that.
Yeah,
And
right.
so I found a really good source of that, and I stocked up and got like I was getting like 25 gallons at a time, and because I didn't know if I'd be able to get it again.
Yeah, yeah.
I'm a small producer, and it wasn't easy for me to get, so I'm just like, I'm gonna stock up, um and yeah, I it's hard to find like an exact starting point. It's been an evolving thing for many years, but I remember like in this similar group of friends, the one that I mentioned earlier about the one that's up in northern Michigan, some of these people had been doing different things, utilizing bitters in a very traditional sense for a long time to aid in digestion. I'd be over there and they would go out in their yard, and they live in very like remote areas, and nothing's getting sprayed up there. It's rural. It's not close to like roads or anywhere where it would get like, I don't know, manufacturing residues or debris from cars and stuff like that. So like they'd go out in their yard though, and they would pick dandelion leaves and stuff, and they would just chew on this and really like taste the bitterness of it.
Yeah, yeah.
And they kind of got me onto that, and that was something I also began doing. So I understood the benefits of how bitter flavors and just bitterness can really aid in the digestive process. And so I would say like those kinds of things, my interest in like health and nutrition being combined with maybe my background in the bar, and mixing drinks together, different ingredients together on a very regular basis, I think helped inform how I was going to build unicorn bitters.
Yeah. Well, it's funny. I think a lot of us kind of have a little bit of a bar background. I'm a was a musician for many years, so I spent a lot of time in bars, and actually grew up in a tavern. My parents owned a tavern, but my friend Sarah Donahue in Cornwall, England, she is very into bitters, and she told me one time we were talking. She said, the way she learned about bitters, and I think it was Angostura that she used, was if someone in the bar got really drunk and like couldn't stand, they were going to have to throw them out. She'd give them a shot of Angostura, and it would sober them up. Have you ever had that experience?
Yeah, I mean, I've also had people who had like heartburn and stuff,
Yeah.
so they'll come up and they'll ask for bitters. I feel like that's something, I've worked in the service industry for ages, and even before I was bartending, I feel like I would have that request, and I didn't really understand it, but like it makes sense now. And yeah, I think I think I could see it working to sober you up. I mean, there's a lot of people who are not used to those flavors, so I feel like there's a whole market where I'm at in Chicago for this spirit called Malort, and their whole like shtick is kind of like having it be this novel thing, like shock value, like
Mm-hmm.
buy your friend a shot of Malort and like watch as he winces, when he swallows the shot or something like that.
Really?
Yeah,
Interesting.
it's you see billboards about that, like about it, how gross it is and stuff. It's like
Yeah, okay, all
thing,
right.
but I really don't mind it. I'm used to that kind of stuff, and I don't actually find it that bitter. And there's so many good products, but I feel like a lot of them, you could probably expand on this more too, but I feel like a lot of things that exist, I guess Malort, Angostura even,
Yeah,
or Campari, and Aperol, all these things, like I feel like they're a little bit more watered down of
yeah,
what
exactly.
the earlier versions would be. Like Angostura, that's one of the other reasons I kind of created the bitters, is I was just having a difficult time finding a really high quality clean one. Angostura is
Hmm.
great, but it's like it's got a lot of sugar added to it, and it's got
Right.
like caramel color number 40 and stuff like that. And
Well, right, and
yeah,
yours,
I think a
you
lot of
can. you can really taste the botanicals in your bitters, and you can see them. I mean, it's not like like a pure amber colored liquid or something. I mean, you're taking an herbal product.
Well, I'm glad, yeah, and thank you so much. I'm happy you recognize that and that you can taste the different components in there and stuff like that. And as you've seen, it's a very it's very much a natural product. Separation is very natural, so we have it on the label to shake well
Hmm.
before you take it, before you consume it. Um, it's definitely not something that is uniform. If you walk to like certain aisles of the store and I don't know, you look at something at the grocery store and it's all like, shelf stable and
Yeah, yeah, I know
uniform,
what you mean.
different
And,
cooking
and really,
oils.
this is exactly the way it should be. You know, when I was down in Georgia playing music a lot, they had just allowed people to start making absinthe again.
Oh
And
wow.
absinthe was very, very, very popular. And again, absinthe has they add a lot of sugar to it. I mean, the commercial products, and it's very. I'm not gonna. There are probably some craft ones that are really good. Okay,
Right.
but as far as the more commercial ones, um, I was not impressed at all. But then some people started trying to make their own and using the essential oil of the wormwood and getting really, really sick. So
Mm.
I mean, I am very, very good with an absinthe made from, a natural tincture of wormwood, but I don't want anything over processed, over refined, because that's not the natural state of the medicinal herb.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, wormwood, wormwood's interesting. A lot of these things, they're just ancient and they've been used since for as long as
Yeah,
books date back. I mean, wormwood in particular, it's biblical. It's
right.
mentioned in the Bible. It's meant Shakespeare mentions it.
Yeah.
Um,
I always say it's probably the first medicinal herb because somebody probably got some wormwood into their water and realized the water was safe to drink.
yeah, I mean that's I know you're very knowledgeable about the mythology and the folklore and stuff. I love that. It's interesting. There's all these crazy stories about it, like that it can you know s send you into some kind of like stupor or change your
Right,
mental
right.
state. And I don't know
The
if
thujone component
right,
of
the
it.
thujone component, which that's interesting too because it has benefits, but obviously um it's got a downside as well if you overdo it. I think it can be toxic, just like
Yeah,
any of these things,
yeah,
just like
and
anything.
especially in the essential oil. Really, thujone doesn't bother me in the least as long as it's natural state. If it's tea or tincture, I'm good. I'm not messing with that essential oil. And essential oils can be dangerous. I mean, you can die from the essential oil of mint if you take enough of it. So I always try to be very cautious with essential oils. But its cousin mugwort is really interesting in that it has some mood balancing effects and helps with sleep and what they call lucid dreaming. Not really something I get into, but those that family of plants is remarkable. And there's one called Sweet Annie that has some of the best antiviral properties. And it's a cousin of wormwood. So, for a while the government freaked out about wormwood because of absinthe and supposed hallucinations. And when we really look at it, a lot of those artists were drinking paint thinner and all the high proof alcohol they could get, and it's easy to blame an herb as opposed to just bad habits.
Right. I feel like there's so many crazy rumors about it. I mean, I remember like in high school and stuff, people would be like, dude, you gotta find absinthe, but it's illegal. You can't even buy it in
Right.
stores. But I don't know if it was actually ever outlawed or maybe I don't know.
No, I'm not sure either. I don't know if it was an agreement among the distillers to stop making it. I know in France it was outlawed for a while, but in the United States, I'm not sure if it ever actually was.
That's ironic because I feel like the Europeans and particularly the French have like a better relationship with these things. I've actually sourced certain herbs from France because they grow a lot of this stuff because they're
Yeah,
making a lot of these different drink modifiers, aperitifs and digestifs
absolutely. No,
and stuff.
you're 100% right on that. The French and the Germans, especially, are very, and the Polish. You got to give the Polish their due. Really into not well. All right, so for a time in France, herbal medicine was actually made illegal. But then Maurice Messague came and brought it back, and he was treating like royal families from several different European countries and the Prime Minister of France and Winston Churchill. And so they had to say, okay, we're going to kind of allow it again, but they never lost their love of liqueurs and aperitifs and all that.
That's crazy. Such cool history there.
Yeah, Maurice Messague, if you want to check out something really interesting, all his herbal medicine was done topically through baths and soaks. So,
Wow.
yeah, nothing internal, everything external. And of his day, which would be around early 1950s, he was the most famous herbalist in the world and a really interesting guy. But anyway, I want you to tell me,
Yeah.
okay, so we've just talked about a little bit, the quality of the product is really good. Tell me how did you come up with your formulas?
Well, you know, a lot of research, first
Hmm.
of all. I spent a lot of time looking at the products that were currently out there, seeing what they had, seeing what I liked about those products, what I didn't like,
Hmm.
and looking at areas that they could improve, and just learning more about bitter herbs, things that have great medicinal properties, that I think would work synergistically in a bitters tincture formula.
Hmm. Okay.
So basically, I I kind of handled each one almost in two parts. I handled it. I I selected the components for the bitter aspects, um, the flavor, more so I would say, even though these are kind of going to be intertwined. And then I selected more like almost like an aromatic blend, the kinds, and aroma and taste are so closely related.
I was actually going
I
to
know those
mention
can
that
be kind of
because
the
your bitters are very aromatic. In fact, I have a little allergy to lavender, but your lavender bitters, I have found actually work really well as a major flavor enhancer, like if I was going to use herbs de Provence or something.
I'm so happy to hear that. Yeah, and I it's been a big huge learning experience for me as well. I've played around so much with dried herbs versus fresh herbs.
Hmm.
Um, and it's taught me a lot, and each behaves so differently. You really need to work with different ratios if you are extracting dried herbs versus fresh, as I'm sure you
Oh
know
yeah,
well.
but our audience may not know that. Tell us how what the difference is.
Well, yeah, I mean the fresh ones are just going to have a lot. They're going to have the water still in them. So
Yeah, the water exactly.
it's that's something that took me time to learn really. I initially I thought that it would be downright like it would benefit overall the taste, the ultimate concentration of things to use only fresh ingredients
Hmm,
or
okay.
dry ingredients. The fresh. So I've done two batches, and the first batch was only dried ingredients.
Hmm.
Um, the second batch was a lot more fresh. It was much harder to do that. It was harder to find places that had all of these things fresh. Um, but the water that's still present in the fresh herbs, it in some cases it dilutes the flavor.
Right.
In some cases, in some areas, I would say it makes it better, and in some areas, it doesn't make it better. And I think, Chinese medicine, they've really tapped into this because they have certain herbs, like I know varieties of orange peel and stuff in particular, they increase in value the older they get.
Right.
And
Yeah.
they have these like crazy centuries old or decades old orange peels and stuff like that. And they're very prized because the flavor kind of concentrates in a way. Those like
Hmm.
oils and the little what microscopic bits of moisture or oil are still present, it almost like crystallizes.
Yes, that's right. You're exactly right.
And
Yeah.
and
Hmm.
yeah, it has this kind of crystallization effect. So, I don't think there's probably not many people out there that have both batches to compare them to, but I compared them a lot, and as I was building them and blending all of the herbs to make the final batches complete, I'm constantly like tasting. And with bitters, as I'm doing this and blending it, it was like such a long process because your palate's like gets ruined very quickly. Like you can
Yeah.
only taste so much in one evening.
Yep.
Like, people, wine drinkers know this and stuff, but with bitters, it's even more so because like it's such harsh flavors. Like you very quickly can't tell the difference so much between things. So like I would just have to do it very slowly, a little bit each day, and get things dialed in. But the thing that I was really noticing is like the first batch I made with primarily dry ingredients is it's developed a much like sweeter taste.
Mhm.
It tastes like more sugary in some ways, like a good aged bourbon or something like that.
Right.
Whereas the second batch I found is it has I think it's just more bitter. I think it has a stronger bitter aftertaste
Hmm.
that really lingers. And it's nice to see they're aging nicely. They've changed over time. They're starting to like mellow out and stuff. So
Okay. So they're still aging in the bottle. That's good.
yeah, yeah. It's
Yeah, like so with licorice, for instance, Chinese version is Dong Quai, and totally differently used than how we do licorice in European or American herbal medicine for the most part. It's a cured, dried licorice root. And the flavor, like if you have just plain licorice, it does have that anise sweetness to it. Um, Dong Quai is such a deeper flavor, and it's also different medicinally. So, and of course, fresh herbs are also going to dilute the alcohol a little bit too. So, yeah, I can totally see how the flavor profile would alter.
what's that called again?
Dong Quai, Dongquai,
Okay,
Chinese licorice root.
okay.
It's cured and it's dried and often aged for decades.
That is cool. I'm gonna write that down.
Yeah, it's just pretty cool. It's almost, I would say, in flavor more like American Angelica or star anise. It has more of a star anise flavor, but maybe a little bit of a vanilla background. Um, it's mellowed a lot from the original licorice root and a little sweeter, as you said. That's why it triggered that in my mind. Um, but very powerful on uh, especially for menopausal type issues. Seems to be very good for certain issues like that.
That sounds delicious, though. I've got to
Oh, it
look
is.
more.
It really
Yeah.
is, actually. They make Don-quai candies, and well, and also if you want to look at in America, the Angelica, candied Angelica root, what a wonderful flavor that is. That's very much like anise, and you can make a candy out of it. I have known people who take candied Angelica and tincture it for a cough syrup. Really, if you like licorice, and I like licorice, those are, that fennel flavor, that anise flavor, that, kind of unique flavor really comes through in such as that. Yeah.
I definitely enjoy that flavor, and yeah, I think it's interesting, like just seeing how things change as you work with them. And yeah, one thing I forgot to mention too is like the ratios change. Going back to like the dried versus fresh, it's you use more it's a 1 to 5 ratio for the dried versus
Yeah.
a 1 to 2 ratio for the fresh stuff. And
Yeah. Definitely.
it's also it took me time to figure out like with the dried stuff sometimes you I would do an initial extraction and then I would take it out and I would kind of like rehydrate it a little bit because
Hmm.
it's hard to fully like penetrate that material with just
Hmm.
alcohol when it's
Yeah.
so shriveled up. You think about like a grape or you think about like a raisin. Well, it used to be a grape. It was much bigger with all that moisture in it, but you've got to kind of put the moisture back in there to pump it back up so that you can actually like get in and get something out of it.
Right. Well, and I think you also have a knack. I'm not, well, you can tell me whether it's something you learned or if this is just a quality you have of understanding herbal energetics, because the orange bitters are what we would call in, herbal energetics, or traditional Chinese medicine or Ayurveda, any way you want to look at it, a warming, more energetic type bitter, where the lavender bitters are more of a cooling bitter.
That's funny. I don't have a background in this, but the energetics are something that people have talked to me about, and yeah, those choices were more kind of intuitive and just going off of what I've found to work well together.
Hmm.
Yeah, so I'm glad that they make sense together energetically because I didn't really have that knowledge going into it.
Well, you nailed it. There's no doubt about it. When I was probably maybe 3 years ago, four, five now, probably 5 years ago, I was asked to do a class on making craft bitters. And I said, I'm going to do a warming bitters, and I'm going to do a cooling bitters. And in the warming bitters, I used orange peel, and I used cloves, and I used star anise, and uh, I used Oregon grape. Didn't have gentian or anything like that. So I used Oregon grape as the primary bitter.
Okay.
And then for the cooling, I did mint, licorice, and hops bud.
Wow.
And you can see, I mean, you just reacted. You know exactly what I'm talking about. So when I took a taste of your orange bitters and then your lavender bitters, I thought, well, this guy just nailed it. He just actually came up with a better formula than I came up with, more aromatic, more flavorful, but in terms of herbal energetics, going to do the exact same job perfectly.
Oh, well, thank you so much. I mean, yeah, I was I was just doing my best to find things that like I was familiar with and also like I said, find things that worked synergistically in there. I wanted it to have a anti-parasitic component
Hmm.
as much as possible, and so I really I liked the black walnut in there.
Oh yeah,
Those are
definitely. Yeah,
very
that was good. I can taste that.
yeah, and those are that's very. that's very strong stuff. Like that's an ancient kind of
Right.
anti-parasitic remedy. I think that combined with cloves, which are
Hmm.
also in the orange vanilla one. Um, yeah, it's interesting because there was another bitter and anti-parasitic ingredient that I actually ended up removing because it was like too strong. But it's quassia bark. Have you
Oh yeah,
heard of
yeah, I
that?
know what you mean. Yep.
Yeah, and it's like I think it's like native to the Caribbean or something like that, but it just looks like wood chips.
Yeah,
But it's extremely, extremely bitter, and it's like
more of a quinine flavor.
yeah, I do like quinine because I've got like the cinchona bark in there,
Hmm.
which lends itself to that. But um
Sharper.
yeah, this ingredient though, like I had read just some papers on PubMed about this stuff. If you take like too much of it, it can kind of like mess up your microbiome. So I actually
Yeah,
like didn't put that in
yeah, I
it.
can't. No, you're right about that. You got to watch out for gut health. I just had someone ask me the other day about a parasitic issue, and I said, well, don't take everybody's advice because you can go too far and screw up your gut microbiome, and actually you won't know if you still have the parasites or not because your intestines are going to be wrecked.
Yeah, I mean that's something that's very hard to figure out. I haven't done as much work as some people. It's not something I'm like struggling with enough that it's brought me into a doctor or to get checked out
Right.
by somebody. But
Well,
it seems I don't know.
I mean,
I've heard
we can talk offline. You can send me an email, and I might have a couple of suggestions for that. I mean, and of course, one of the most common would be sage. And I mean, sage is a good
Okay.
bitter herb as well. And it's like Hippocrates said, "Why must a man die if he has sage growing in his garden?" It really is pretty good. Not as strong, but universal. And then of course there's rosemary, and a lot of things that are just so commonplace we don't even really think about them anymore. Oh, I forgot.
Yeah,
In my cooling bitters, I also
yeah, I
use
would.
dandelion and burdock root. I really like that too. Have you messed with dandelion much?
Well, I have. I mean, it that friend I mentioned earlier kind of got me into that, just nibbling on a leaf after a meal. I found that to be
Hmm.
really beneficial and like energizing and just made me feel good. And then I, learned that the root has totally different benefits. And so, I found a great local grower. I mean, you could find dandelion anywhere, but there's a guy on a farm in like
Oh,
central
great.
Illinois that he he just kind of like lets things go. He's
Uh-huh.
into permaculture and just letting his farm grow up
Yeah,
naturally. He
yeah.
doesn't weed it a whole lot. So I was buying those things from him. But yes, I love that combination. And it's funny because there was a bitters product, I think from England, that I was actually inspired by. Um, I wish I could think of the name of this.
Oh, don't worry about it. We want people to buy
But
yours.
yeah, I mean it's mine is better, but it's this product. It's called like burdock and dandelion bitters,
Oh, nice. Okay.
and I just thought that was so cool because at that time I didn't really, I was pretty new to these things. I was pretty new to bitters and um, just the benefits of like dandelion and burdock and stuff like that. But I was somewhat familiar. I was actually more familiar with burdock at that time because I'd spent some time in Japan and they use burdock so much. It's
Gobo.
gobo, exactly. They call it gobo over there, and they use it in so many dishes. And I mean, they eat it pretty regularly.
Yeah, I mean,
Um,
and I think that's great too. I grow it for food as well. I think it's a delicious plant.
that's so cool. I did not grow up with that in my diet, but I love finding things like that out. Like at some age I learned that turmeric was a great anti-inflammatory.
Yeah,
Well, it just so happens that like they use it in so many like Indian dishes and stuff like that. So I enjoy it's like okay, these are things that are like tried and true and they've they've been using them since ancient times.
Hmm.
And it just happens to grow naturally, like all around the Midwest where I live. I think where you live too,
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Appalachia.
Everywhere.
It's so common. It's so easy to find. So it's just like that kind of blew my mind that, n nobody around here
Yeah. They just spray them
that
with
I
the
knew was doing this. Um, so yeah, I definitely like, I wanted that in there, and that adds a nice bitterness and nice herbal component to it.
Hmm.
I put the milk thistle in there because
Oh, yeah.
it's like a great liver protectant, and this is such a it's such a liver heavy tincture in a good way.
Right.
It kind of fires up the liver, and so why not put something in there that would also replenish the liver as well, such as milk thistle. That was
Yeah.
an herb that I've been
Exactly. Yeah.
taking. I think my parents had taken that, so I would take that in a capsule form from a young age. So I was kind of familiar with that, and
Right. It is the best liver regenerative herb. It's actually the only herb really clinically proven by German scientists to regenerate damaged liver tissue, although there are other bitter herbs that do that as well. But it's probably the most powerful.
that's so cool. Yeah, I'm glad. I always love when things like this get mainstream medical
Yeah.
attention and actually, get studied. It's
Yeah, well, this was the foundation. I mean, the foundation of really modern medicine was bitter formulas. I mean, it goes back to ancient Greece and ancient King Mithridates, and I mean, but yeah. All right, so I set the record for 40 minutes, so we've got about 4.5 minutes. Tell
okay.
people about the company, where they can get the product. Give us the good pitch because I fully endorse this product, y'all. Okay. So go ahead and just let fly on it.
Well, thank you, thank you. So yes, unicorn bitters, you can find them at unicornbitters.store. Um, and it's the best bitters product you'll find. I created this for health. I created it as something that can really aid in digestion. I take it by mouth. I'll take a couple droppers full. Usually, I like it after a meal. Some people say that bitters work better before you eat, but I enjoy it after, and I also really enjoy it if I have a stomach ache. Just if I have a really heavy meal, if I have like a steak, if I have something very fatty and I'm feeling like like weighed down, I take the bitters. It no joke makes me feel way better. It just like relieves me and it kind of makes everything work. It activates the digestive system. So that is what I created them for, and they work amazingly for that. They also work amazingly as a cocktail ingredient. They they do a far better job of balancing out any cocktail than any other bitters I've found on the market. And yeah, I don't think I haven't found anything else like them that exists. I'm glad to hear that you haven't either, and I'm so happy. And thank you for putting your book out there. Thanks for
Yeah,
the
sure.
amazing information
And all right,
on
so let's
that.
hit
And
that website one more time. Tell people how they can order them.
that's right. It's unicornbitters.store. It's
Unicornbitters.store.
UNICORNBITTERS dot STORE. Unicornbitters.store.
Okay, great. And do you have any social media or contact information?
Yeah, we're on Instagram. I believe it's just at Unicorn Bitters. Let me make sure that's actually what the handle is. It's at unicorn underscore bitters, spelled the same way as the website. There's just that underscore hyphen there.
Gotcha.
At unicorn underscore bitters.
All right. Well, I really appreciate you talking with me this evening. And Y'all, I want you to check out Tyler's product. This is really good. It's not called Unicorn Bitters out of coincidence. It is a very special product. The information in this podcast is not intended to diagnose or treat any disease or condition. Nothing I say or write has been evaluated or approved by the FDA. I'm not a doctor. The U.S. government does not recognize the practice of herbal medicine, and there is no governing body regulating herbalists. Therefore, I'm really just a guy who studies herbs. I'm not offering any advice. I won't even claim that anything I write or say is accurate or true. I can tell you what herbs have been traditionally used for. I can tell you my own experience and if I believe an herb has helped me. I cannot nor would I tell you to do the same. If you use an herb anyone recommends, you are treating yourself. You take full responsibility for your health. Humans are individuals and no two are identical. What works for me may not work for you. You may have an allergy, a sensitivity, an underlying condition that no one else even shares and you don't even know about. Be careful with your health. By continuing to listen to my podcast or read my blog, you agree to be responsible for yourself, do your own research, make your own choices, and not to blame me for anything ever.